Hello, everyone, and welcome. Sorry I got started a bit late. As you can see, I am not at home. I'm not where I normally am. I am still on the road. I was supposed to be back in Seattle Saturday, but ended up getting a little ill, and instead of oh, I'm not logged on as the right person here. I need to log on as me. So my technology is a little off because I'm not in the same place. So let me log out here. Sign out here. I'm gonna sign in as me for a second. So give me one more second here while I get it all together. Anyway, I was in town. I'm actually in Las Vegas. I did 2 events here, and I spent 5 days filming a new class that I'm putting together for this lovely couple that's doing a class on the law of attraction. So I said that I would contribute to their effort to kind of deepen the process and to provide some EFT. I was doing some tapping with them. So I'm still logging on to a bunch of different systems now. So that I can actually see the comments and the like. So if you'll just give me one more second, I will be back. In the meantime, please type into the chat who's here, where you're located. If you've already got any pressing questions waiting that you've brought with you, by all means, put them in there. We will get to them very, very quickly. So remember, satsang is that time in the week where we get to put aside all of the ideas about everything. Really, put aside your life as it was. Put aside your ambitions. Put aside all of your ideas. Even put aside all your questions about how to improve your life and grow in your life. That's all well and good. But I love providing this space where we can actually dig deeply into the truth of our being, the being that is beyond all of our ideas, beyond our sense of identity, beyond all of our limitations. Because all of those limitations are, they're not real. They're self-imposed. And to come to discover who you actually are, which is what satsang is. Satsang simply means communion with truth. It doesn't mean me as I'm just kind of the poster child, right? Sitting up here and kind of organizing the whole thing. But the real truth comes from you. The question and the answer come from the same place. And the recognition of the truth of the answer and the importance of the question is your natural state of recognition. So we have Morosiclis from Holland. We have Laura Reed. Good afternoon. Hello, Laura. Hello, Eli. Hello, Ursula from Madeira Island in Portugal. Hi there. Chrissy. Hello, Chrissy. Love from New Zealand. Barbara. Love from Sandpoint, Idaho. Keith Liska. Hi, GB. I'm back. Good. Glad to have you. Meryl Port. Good to see you from Queensland. And yes, I apologize for last week. I suddenly just kind of woke up in the morning and couldn't do much. So I really couldn't do a very good job talking to you all. So sorry that it got canceled on short notice last week. Barbara from Sweden, hello. Keith is from Birmingham, United Kingdom. Anne, good to see you back. Anne, I think, is in South or North Carolina. One of the two. So, anyone else that's here, by all means, please, please let me know who you are and where you are, and any comments or questions you might have. There's something I wanted to read to you that I ran across. Liz Love from Jersey, Katie from London, Jonas from Sweden. Eli, can you talk about the balance of critical thinking versus not letting your thoughts run your life? Ah, good. Great question. Sunil from Birmingham, the UK. The majority of people, Anne is in Georgia. Alessandra is in Monterey, California. But anyway, I found this quote from the Tao Te Ching. And this particular one is a quote. This is from a version of the Tao that I'm very, very fond of. It's a new one by Stephen Mitchell. And in fact, you can get it on YouTube for free. Just look up, it's spelled with a D, Tao Te Ching, Stephen Mitchell. And it's a recording of his entire translation. But anyway, let me read this to you. I kind of, nice to set the tone as I begin to answer the questions that are starting to come in. It goes like this. Can you coax your mind from its wandering and keep to the original oneness? Can you let your body become supple as a newborn child? Can you cleanse your inner vision until you see nothing but the light? Can you love people and lead them without imposing your will? Can you deal with the most vital matters by letting events take their course? Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Giving birth and nourishing, having without possessing, acting with no expectations, leading and not trying to control. This is the supreme virtue. That one really, really, really touched me, because not only is it a very deep spiritual insight, very powerful way of finding yourself in the midst of all the noise, it also in that establishes our relationship with the world. Leading without imposing our will. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had leaders of countries that were not simply trying to impose their will upon us, but were actually leading to some vision that was worth being led to? All right, let's take this first question. A couple of people have joined me here. Glad to see you. It's open. It wasn't really a public thing, but some friends of mine have decided to kind of stop over and give a listen. And I think this might be the first satsang they've ever been to. So anyway, here's one question from Eli. Can you talk about the balance of critical thinking versus not letting your thoughts run your life? Well, it would seem on the surface that there'd be kind of a contradiction there, right? You want to actually control your thoughts and the way you think. And at the same time, you want to be free from thought. Thought is malleable. I mean, thought is just, the thinking process is just habits of particular patterns of thought that get put into place that we don't question. So the term critical thinking, I don't think is actually quite accurate. I think what it really is to step back and assess your thoughts and the flow of your thoughts and the patterns of your thoughts from a different place, from a perspective outside of thought. If you're completely identified with your thoughts and the way they flow, you're going to think that's all there is to it. And you're going to be in this fight trying to change your thoughts, trying to not let them run your life. But if you're able to step outside of your thoughts, and of course you are, Because if you couldn't step outside of your thoughts, you couldn't look at them. You couldn't see them. You couldn't talk about them. You have to take a position that is aloof from thought in order to be able to even see them. But from this place that is actually free of thought, you can assess the value of those thoughts. You can assess the truth of them. Do they reflect to you? Do they embody the sense of being without limit, without bounds? Do they reflect a version of you that is whole and complete and loving and compassionate and full? Or do they reflect a version of you that is very narrow and constricted and struggling? So the critical thinking can be kind of misleading. I see it more as consciousness is assessing its own environment. To be willing to challenge assumptions and look at the quality and character of your thinking would be called critical thinking. It's being able to look at a thought pattern and say, is this useful? Is it true? Is it valuable? Is it helpful? Is it loving? Is it kind? That position there is way, way more than thinking. You're actually taking a deep spiritual perspective that values love over hate, that values abundance over lack, that values life over death. And as a result, you are then capable of, as you said, not letting your thoughts run your life. They only run your life when they're not challenged. If they're not challenged, they're just going to keep going. You know, I mean, if you don't pull the plug on the fan, it's just going to keep going. But if you do pull the plug on the fan, it'll eventually just slow down. So it's not the thoughts that are running your life; it's your belief in them that is running your life. The moment you believe something is true, it becomes true, and the moment it becomes true for you. That is, your experience will literally conform itself to fit your deeply held beliefs. That's why it's so significant and so important for us to dig deeply through spiritual inquiry into the true nature of the self. So that it isn't just about getting a different version of yourself or even having better thoughts. It's about the discovery of that which is absolutely true, whether you believe it or not. But to harmonize with that which is absolutely true makes you one with the truth. And at that point, your life is not just a reflection of the quality of your thoughts, it's a living reflection of the truth of all being. And that to me is like pretty cool. Thanks, Eli. Does that answer it for you? We have Sunil from Birmingham, UK. We have Billy Boy, 7465. from Florida. Billy Boy. Just wanted to know, what isn't a thought? Sure seems like everything is from my standpoint. Wonderful question. Wonderful question. Well, what isn't a thought? You're absolutely right that the vast majority of our experience is thought. And our identification with thought actually filters everything we experience so that we don't actually have a direct experience. We experience our thought of it. Imagine you're walking someplace, maybe through a park or something, it's springtime, and all of a sudden, this incredibly beautiful flower catches your attention. It's just this sudden moment, like out of the side of it, you catch it out of the side of your eye, you look over, and there's just this moment of, everything stops. The pure beauty of it just hits you, right? In that moment, there's no thought, pure experience. Now, within moments, probably milliseconds, the mind kicks in and goes, oh my God, what a beautiful flower. That's lovely. I've never seen anything like that. That's amazing. I wonder what kind of flower that is. You know, I think I saw one of those at Whole Foods. They were selling them, and boom, now you're no longer with the flower, you're in your narrative. You've stepped off of the Great Wall of China, and now you're watching the YouTube video of it. You're seeing the representation of it and not the actual thing. Thought is always secondary. We're just so addicted to it. We've just been so enculturated into our minds that we think our thoughts about things are the actual things themselves, and they're not. But to bring this even more home to you, the one who's actually looking at the thought, the one who asked this question, what isn't a thought? Sure seems like everything is a thought. Every thought that you've ever had, you're looking at it. Are you a thought? Do you just exist as a thought? If so, who's thinking you? The one who's looking at thoughts cannot possibly be a thought. Thoughts come and go, don't they? Vit, 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 vit. Feelings come and go. Sensations come and go constantly. Something is there that notices the sensation come and go, notices that the feeling comes and goes, notice that the thoughts come and go. Whatever that is, it's essentially something different from thought, feeling, and sensation because it is not coming and going. You following that? It's such an important thing to see because we're so completely absorbed and attached to our thoughts, especially our version, our vision, our idea of what things are, that we miss the most obvious thing, which is you are watching all of it happen. So if it's coming and going and you're watching it coming and going, it means you're not coming and going, which means you are substantially and essentially something different from that which is coming and going. That is what I call consciousness. And you can look through your entire life and see that it's always been like that. The events of your life have changed. The events you experienced at 5 years old, the effect at 10, 20, 50, 60, and beyond, they have constantly changed. But look at the experience of watching it all happen. Was the consciousness, the experiencing, the knowing itself any different at any of those times, or was it always the same? Content changes. The perceived changes. Has the perceiver actually changed? And again, this isn't theory, right? This is just a belief system I'm putting in your head. I'm asking you to look for yourself. Was the experiencing itself ever any different? Which means that something throughout your entire life has never changed. Whatever that is, it's obviously here now. It's obviously hearing my words. It's obviously hearing the thoughts that are coming in response to my words or the feelings. Something is at the root of all of it that is changeless and solid and trustworthy and unchanging. Not because we made it that way, because it just is. That, to me, is the true self. That's the goal of all spiritual seeking. To find that and to recognize that as your true self, and not the flow of thoughts, sensations, and feelings, which you can never stop. And you wouldn't want to. Imagine if your experience was changeless and you didn't like it. Whoops. That would suck. Right? The very fact that life is constantly flowing is what allows growth and evolution and expansion and creativity and all sorts of new things to happen. But yet all of that flow could not happen if there wasn't something changeless that was experiencing it all. Well, that changeless thing is you. And you know it's you because who else is hearing my words? Is there somebody else in there? It's you. Does that answer your question there, Billy Boy? Funny to say that. Guys, feel free if you have a question to pipe up. Happy to answer from the studio audience. Chosen one. Where'd you go? I get so many questions, they flow off the screen and then it starts jumping around. Hey, GP, did you ever have psychic experiences through meditation? Yep. Happens quite frequently, actually. I always recommend to people that they do not seek or make a big deal out of those things. They kind of come with the territory. The more you are identified with the changeless center, the more the limits come off. Because the limits are just the self-image we hold. And that self-image is always bound, and it's a result of conditioning. It's not actually who you are. And the more you see through that, the more those boundaries expand and begin to dissolve away. You're going to find that there's nothing that isn't accessible to you. But the access to it is not for any kind of egoic purpose. You're not trying to become a psychic. You're not trying to become somebody who can, read minds, even if it's the most benevolent of intention to take care of somebody else. It comes from a very different place. It comes from this changeless place in the middle that is nothing but benevolent. I mean, if it's changeless, what the heck does it have to worry about, right? I mean, there's no issues there. There's no problems. Those are all created by the mind and its limitations. But if there are no limitations, there are no problems. And so, yes, you become extremely sensitive to the thoughts and feelings of the people around you, but they just move through you. It isn't an issue, nor is it something you should seek. I like to use the example of, when you get into a boat, you don't get into a boat to go make wakes, right? That's not the point. You get into a boat to go somewhere. The wake just happens as a consequence of it. As a matter of fact, you get fascinated by the wake. You're not going to wake. You're not going to watch where you're going. You're going to slam into something. You're in the boat to go somewhere. And the idea of trying to gain esoteric power and levitate and psychic abilities and all of that sort of stuff. If they come, fine. If they don't, fine. It's irrelevant. If they come, great. You use it like any other skill. I had a gift for music and not everybody did. I had no gift for sports and many people did, right? So I had these gifts, I used them, right? So if it shows up, you want to have wisdom guided. Every time a new power shows up for a human being, believe me, the ego is there to want to grab control over it, to pat itself on the back. It wants to take credit for what it didn't do. It's the example I've always used before. The acrobats, the great in the circus, the people doing all these death-defying feats above the crowd, and they get done, and the crowd comes to their feet in applause, and the clowns come out and start taking bows. That's the ego. Just let whatever new insights, powers, abilities arise within you. Just let them happen. If you don't, you will get very, very distracted, and the ego will actually become stronger. It's going to be very, very happy with itself. And really, a contented ego is a very difficult ego to deal with. You can just look at politicians to see that. So does that answer your question, chosen one? Patang, hi, GP from Israel. Hi, good to see you. Unity Transmissions. Hi, GP. Hi, good to see you. Seeking Truth. Hello, GP. I have consciously found out what I am. Now that has happened, I'm struggling to find interest in life activities. It feels like none of that is real and doesn't matter. It comes and goes. Yes, good. That happens. What's happening is, look, our lives, before we have some awakening to who we actually are, our lives are going down a pattern that has been established based on who you thought you were, based on your conditioning, the response, basically the normal stuff that every human being does. And so within that context, that narrow little version of yourself, you're making decisions as to what I want, what's important, what's going to satisfy me. But we all have that experience. We think something's going to satisfy us, and we don't. This wonderful thing I want to get, you get it, and the next day you're selling it on eBay. God, how do I get rid of this thing? Because all of those are arising out of the narrow, small, unreal sense of yourself. When that begins to break down, you're not, you're suddenly in between two worlds. Immediately, it's not all of a sudden, oh, you're the sage wearing ochre robes and everything is harmonizing. You're going to find that things are going to fall away, and it's going to be very disorienting. Very, what in the world happens to me now? Because the old motivations, which are no longer relevant to you because you're not that person anymore that had them, have fallen away, but the new ones have not yet emerged. This is an extremely important time to take your time. Just, don't go throwing your job. Don't go out and tell the boss to go and create an anatomically impossible act and storm out. Just do what you need to do every day, but just keep taking more and more time to let this sense, this emerging sense, sink into the entire system. You've heard me say that it has to move south. The vision almost always happens in the mind first, or in the consciousness becomes conscious of the mind as a function, and conscious and awareness of itself as the enlightened witness to it all. But then it has to move into the body and into the emotions. It has to be felt. And that takes time. There's an integration there that simply takes time. I call it the post-awakening sadhana, or practice. So that your life now can begin to mold itself and give expression to the new vision that you have found. Many people have this and then get very discouraged when they find that the old patterns are still there. Well, yeah, they are, right? You said you turn off that, unplug the fan, it's going to keep going for a while, right? You don't stick your hand in it to try to stop. You go, I made a mistake, right? Of course you did. It will eventually slow down as long as you keep honoring the vision that you've received, you keep identifying with that, and you keep vigilant about and knowledgeable about the nature of conditioning and the way these patterns emerge. Thoughts are going to continue to come. Egoic thoughts are going to continue to arise. Limiting thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, they're going to continue to rise. I'm not getting it, I'm not enlightened enough. There'll be a new set of them that'll come up in response to the vision that you have, but just recognize them for what they are. You are the living truth. You've seen it, you've glimpsed it now. It's something that is no longer theoretical, right? So go back to that all the time, the way you'd go back to an old friend, or the way you'd go back to a loving mother, and just kind of bury yourself in there. As Muji would say, marinate in it. Just let it soak in. And believe me, the truth that you've seen, it will reorganize the nervous system. It'll dissolve the old patterns out of the system and create new ones. You don't have to do it as a personal mission. It's not like a job you have to do. Your job is to simply continue to bear witness to the truth that you've seen, and lovingly and accept completely everything that's being felt without conflict or without any kind of issue. And the end result is you'll find the very fastest route between the initial realization of who you are and the time in which that is completely embodied in your life, so that you and truth are indistinguishable. And since your name is Seeking Truth, I think that's where you want to go. There was another continue, but the isness of it all is what stays. Yeah, correct. You just stay with the isness. Just stay with it. Where else are you going to go? The mind wants to make this into a big deal. Really wants to make this into, oh man, it's got a lot of work to do. But can you see it's the same kind of thing? Any thought that puts you here and the ultimate truth here is wrong. That's the mind. It's sustaining it. It's going to love to say, hey, you really got it. You're really close. Not quite there yet, but you're really close. It's going to do that. In fact, you've never been anywhere else but there. This isn't a discovery that you of what you're going to get. It's a discovery of what's always been. Do you see the difference between that? And of course, this is what the mind can't grasp, because the mind has always been holding an image of you that isn't true. So when you say this is what's always been, the mind looks at the image it's holding of you and say, well, that's not true. But that image isn't you. It never was. It's just an image in the mind. It's a distorted mirror. Does that help you seeking truth? Ida Catherine Angel. Beautiful. Thank you. Sunil Chopra. I found great solace in the yoga of allowing mini course. Oh, great. I also do the true seeing through self-inquiry, and yet I still get caught in the old patterns of wounded unworthiness. How do I release this? Okay, who gets caught in the old pattern of wounded unworthiness? Just stop and think about that for a second. Now, let's slow down and run this whole thing in slow motion. You do the true seeing, and you see it, right? Now, I still get caught in the old patterns of wounded unworthiness. Are you aware of that old pattern coming up? And you're aware of seeing it. And the pattern is a feeling of unworthiness. Okay, the feeling of unworthiness is there. Got it. Fine. But you, the one who is aware of the pattern of unworthiness, are you unworthy? See, when someone asks me a question like, how do I release this? What you're asking is, how do I get rid of that pattern? As if the getting rid of the pattern is where the liberation is. The liberation is seeing the pattern as a pattern and not you. The moment you see that it's not you, does it matter whether it's there or not? It's lost its teeth. It's lost its, you've taken off the Velcro. It can't stick anymore. The mind speaks in first person. It's going to say, I still get caught in the old pattern of wounded unworthiness. Who's that I? What's that referring to? And isn't that just another thought you're aware of? Take a nice step back. If that thought, I still get caught in the old pattern of wounded unworthiness, never occurred to you, would you be stuck? Would you get caught in the old pattern? See, it's just a thought. And you have the moral and spiritual freedom to say, oh, it's not true. Obviously, the one looking at it isn't stuck in it. I mean, it's not there all the time, right? So it's not a permanent condition. It's just another thought that comes and goes. Are you the one who can experience anything? Are you stuck anywhere? Without the thought, I am stuck, are you stuck? If that thought never occurred to you. One of my favorite quotes from Sailor Bob Adamson, is there anything wrong with right now if you don't think about it? Everything just is the way it is. And then we become aware of all these thoughts about it, and positions, and this should be happening, this shouldn't be happening, and I'm good, and then it's good, I'm stuck in this pattern. They're all thoughts. You don't have to believe them. So you don't have to get rid of the pattern. You simply have to see the pattern is a pattern. If you see it's a pattern, it's not you. So it can come and go. And I've been doing this for a lot of years. I still get stuff popping up and go, where did you come from? Right? And every now and then, something will catch me a little bit. Oh, really? Not again. It's not a big deal. I told the story about Papa G, a fully enlightened master, a student of Ramana Maharshi, who would say, be vigilant, keep watching, notice, see it as the pattern as a pattern. Don't identify with it. It's all the time, be vigilant, be vigilant. And somebody asked him, Papa, do you have to be vigilant? To which he responded, until my dying breath. So This is a lifetime thing, right? As long as you're a human being with a body and a mind, it's going to be doing this shit. There's no way around it. You just need to be wise. And you know what? We don't really want it to stop. We're not trying to make this easy. We're trying to make ourselves strong. I don't want to be moral because I haven't had the opportunity to not be. I want to be moral because I've made wise choices, because I've seen the effect of not being that way. I've seen the effect it has when I've been unkind. I know what that feels like. And that has taught me to not be. Nobody had to morally, give me the standard that I had to follow. I did things. I saw the impact they had. It caused me enormous amount of pain, caused pain to others that I couldn't undo. And that taught me more than all the rules and laws and sutras and scriptures put together. That's how you learn for real what is true and what isn't. So, does that answer your question, Sunal? Did I pronounce that right? Sunal or Sunal? She just popped around again. Poppy says, I'd like to know more about thoughts and beliefs. Keep going. Well, I don't know what more to say about that right now. So I'm sure they're going to come up, because that's all we're dealing with, right? The world as we believe it to be is just a belief. It's not like that. The universe is not separate from us. The universe is simply our own hearts, a mirror reflecting ourselves back. The universe is your mind. The universe, and whatever you think it is, that's the form that it takes. So a step along the way is to have better thoughts. But if you really want to go the whole distance, you go beyond thought, because all thought is a limit. Even the best thoughts are limits. And the most limiting thought of all is the thought we hold about ourselves. The idea that you hold of yourself, the self-image, the self-portrait. That is the ultimate limiting factor. And that's actually why the spiritual quest can seem difficult, because it has to strike right at the heart of who you think you are. And we're very possessive about that. The idea of discovering that who I thought I am, I am not, is extremely disorienting, because it's, well, then who am I? And for most, there's a period of time, like that person before, who was talking about kind of losing interest in things. It can be very, very uncomfortable in the middle when the old version of yourself is dropping away, but the clarity of your true nature has not quite dawned yet. But be patient. It will, by its own volition. Remember, nobody chooses this path. It chooses you. The desire for truth is something that arises in everyone at some point in their lifetime or lifetimes. Sometime it can take a very, very long time for that to happen. But once it does, it's way bigger than you. Even the impulse to seek truth didn't come from you. Talk about the ultimate humility. Even your desire to improve your life isn't coming from you. It's coming to you. It's the real you that is shedding itself of the false beliefs about itself. But the reality is that you are so identified with the person you think you are that you think that person's making choices. They're not. The choices are being made for you. Through inspiration, you feel them, and you head in that direction. I would challenge any of you to look at any major decision that's happened in your life and follow it back and see if you can find yourself actually choosing it, or if it wasn't just some kind of an impulse that felt true and you followed it. It didn't come from you. It came from someplace way beyond. And it's the nature of that we're really interested in. Because the weird paradox of it is that when you discover that which is way beyond, you discover that that's who you actually are. Billy Boy, yes, very good. I understand the pointings. Many hugs. Thank you. Great. Wonderful. Sunil, a good question I like to ask is, what is experiencing this all? then seeing that over a range of experiences. Well, the short answer is I am. Who else is there? Who else is experiencing your experiences except you? Who's hearing my voice right now? The problem isn't that you don't actually have direct experience of who you are all the time. The problem is you've believed the thoughts about you rather than the actual experience. Right now, you are simply pure consciousness hearing every word. And you're also hearing the thoughts that are occurring to you, the feelings that are going on. But that which is experiencing it is absolutely silent and peaceful and quiet. Only when that sense of identification rises and we start grabbing it, saying, that's my thought, that's my condition, that's my identity, that sense of my looking outward towards the mind, that's where the limitations take place. That's where we use it. And awakening is nothing more than going, that's not me. And being to withdraw back into that which is seeing everything. And we find that that which is seeing everything cannot be limited. It has no bounds. If it did, we wouldn't have been able to experience what we already experienced. Every experience you have it's like consciousness is waiting, they're already waiting for it to happen. Everything that's arisen. Is there any limit on what you can experience? Which means that the one that's having the experience has no limits. And that's the fact now. Not 100 years from now, not when you attain enlightenment, but now. It's what is actually happening. This is what's happening, not what we think is happening. This is actually what's happening. We're simply seeing things as they are. And that's why awakening is such a like, oh my God, are you kidding? It's so ordinary and self-evident. Oops, click the button. Guys, interject at all if you want to.
I have a question.
Sure.
We've been talking obviously a lot about EFT, something that's very new, relatively new for getting into it to the depth that we've gotten into it. You talk about it in relation to law of attraction. Obviously, if we could bring our energy level up, we can manifest. I guess I'm getting into the more technical side of it, in that when Dan and I are talking to people about EFT and the benefits, and I guess more into is it something you do every day? Is there a certain one? I know we've talked about a lot of different EFT methods that you've shared. I know people that I'm going to talk to are going to say, okay, where do I start? How do I get started? And how often do I do it? And people are always about the right and wrong of things. And yes. I like to, help them clear that up. So you add some,
sure.
They get more into the benefits, the specifics.
Sure. Just in case you guys couldn't hear it, I think it might have been loud enough, but just in case you did, it was a question about EFT, the emotional freedom technique, which I use. And where do people get started on such a thing? As many of you know, the way I approach things is all over the map. In a setting like this, we're trying to dive into the deepest inquiry into the nature of the self. And yet, even doing that inquiry, as everyone discovers who has had some kind of an experience of an awakening, that the integration of that into one's life isn't something that happens instantaneous. The stuff still comes. The experiences still come. The resistance still comes. Fear still comes. These things all come up. Well, where do you start? And for some people who have absolutely no interest in the non-dual inquiry, but are only interested in just kind of improving their lives and having a better quality of life, exactly the same thing applies. Because what we're dealing with, whether your motivation is to become a Buddha or it's to simply get a new house, the resistance to it is the same. It is conditioned patterns within the nervous system. If that's understood, that what you're dealing with are conditioned habitual patterns of energy, then the way to deal with those would be really quite clear. And the power of something like EFT would be obvious. So where do you start? You start with, let's say somebody knows nothing. And let's talk about even someone here who's wanting to integrate this into their life. A tool like the emotional freedom technique is simply communicating safety and acceptance through touch. That's all it is. We are creating an environment of safety, of compassion, of the absence of conflict, in order to allow the natural characteristics of the energy system to migrate to increasingly healthy and harmonious states. Where I always start is with allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. That essential conflict of not wanting to feel it is the linchpin. Even when people take up a practice, no matter what that practice is, whether it be EFT or NLP or meditation, the motivation is to get rid of bad feelings. And because of that, they actually make the conflict worse, and the progress is very slow, if any, and it fits and starts, and it's very, very frustrating. Meditation, as well as EFT and all of these, if taken from the point of view, not that you're trying to fix, rogue thoughts, but you're actually trying to harmonize with yourself, you begin to simply listen. And the way I do EFT is I always start by voicing our most difficult feelings, our fears, our worries, our self-doubts, rather than trying to visualize them away. Embrace them as just being part of the emotional makeup that you happen to have at that particular time. And so I've told people, okay, yeah, if they're going to tap on something, just say, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm really afraid, I'm afraid. And then just give as much honest voice to what you are feeling as possible. And then just watch what happens and watch where it unfolds, to try to keep it really, really simple. People watch me do it. I've been doing it for a decade, right? Over a decade. And so I've had all sorts of phrases and different things that I use in different ways that I approach it. And people get kind of, well, what do I say? What do I say? Well, just tell me the truth. What are you feeling? And that's huge, because most people don't want them. They don't want to feel that. I want to get rid of this feeling. But I have found inevitably, with any technique I've used, just to, for a moment, just put all of your resistance aside and just let yourself feel what you're feeling, that the feeling itself becomes completely unintimidating. Remember going back, the story I was telling about, you see the flower and there's this wonderful moment of awe and beauty, and then the thought kicks in again. Well, the same thing is true about your feelings. A feeling comes up that's uncomfortable, and immediately the narrative about that feeling comes up. And before you know, you're in the story about how horrible this feeling is, right? You're not with the feeling anymore. And you're just trying to keep it away, just like the flower. But if you see that story as just a story and go, let's go find out if it's true, to directly the feeling, all of a sudden, it's just a feeling. It moves to the system. It does its thing. It disappears. Our story about what we're feeling actually is way worse than the feeling itself. And it actually sustains it. It actually perpetuates it. Because the thing that perpetuates it, because all of these feelings are a result of your nervous system being in a defensive posture. So if you're trying to get rid of it, what's it going to do? Go, oh yeah, okay. Or is it just going to dig its heels more into the defensive posture to defend itself against the latest attack, right? And unfortunately, with so much of the self-help stuff, that's all it is. is an attempt to do to you exactly what your parents did to you in the first place, which is not accept you as you are. And all we want is to be accepted and loved and honored for who we are without having to become something else. I mean, that's all we all crave. And that's the wonder of awakening, is that just that. Oh, I am. This is all okay. This is all divine. This is the way it's supposed to be. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. I'm not messed up. So does that answer it for you? Does that help?
Yes, very much.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Cool. Let's see. Opie, why do we feel so different when having different thoughts? Magic? Haha. When I feel powerful, it's amazing, but often I feel powerless. Most of the time, I keep putting labels to myself according to how I feel. Yes, indeed. Of course, there's a continuum between thought and feeling, right? And sensation. A thought can create a feeling. Feelings can generate thoughts. It's a circle. You really can't tell where one starts and where the other ends. Sure, you hold a picture of something that you really don't want to have happen, and you'll feel resistance. You'll feel anxiety. You'll feel those things. It actually isn't enough to just try to change your thoughts, because there's feeling patterns in there already, and they'll just be triggered by something in the environment, and then you have the thoughts. So it is a continuum. The answer actually is to step outside of both thought and feeling and become the witness of them. And now the fact that they're reacting to one another becomes irrelevant to you, because you are not your thoughts and you're not your feelings. Now, the beauty of that is that when you do that, because you're no longer engaged with them, you're no longer feeding them energy, and they get quiet. Like I said, you've just unplugged the fan. They're going to quiet because you're not giving them energy. Your resistance is just like plugging them into a supercharger. The more you resist, the stronger they get. They feed on it, right? I mean, Eckhart Tolle uses the term the pain body, and he says it's feeding time for the pain body, right? Let's cause some misery. I love it. No, we're not consciously aware of that. But the nature of these patterns is they're held together by your resistance to them. So it's absolute. The system. This is a feeling, thinking, sensing machine, and it's this beautiful continuum, right? What we're doing is stepping back into consciousness, where we can actually see what's happening, rather than just be completely sucked into it, and just kind of dragged along, kicking and screaming. Once you're in this place, you're actually in the position where you can discern. And out of that area, out of this space of simply embracing what is happening, but not identifying with it, new energy arises, new perspectives arise, new choices arise, new decisions happen. They happen automatically because there's no fight. You're now coming from wisdom. You are wisdom at that point. This is the wisdom. And yes, you can, most of the time I keep putting labels to myself according to how I feel. Yes. And would you like to stop doing that now? I'm going to highly recommend that you do something a little bit different. Just notice that that's what's happening. I have this feeling when you go, oh, I'm sad. No, you're having a feeling of sadness. And there's nothing wrong with that. The moment you say, I'm sad, you can even become, I'm sad all the time. I always have this feeling. Suddenly it becomes this permanent state. And you've literally put yourself in a box simply because you've identified with a feeling. The feeling has come and gone, right? All feelings come and go. You watch the feeling come, you watch it while it lasts, and you watch it go. So, is it you? So if sadness comes, is it you? Are you the sadness? Or are you just in that moment experiencing sadness? And are you any different because that experience of sadness is there? Are you different? Comes and goes. Has it really left a mark? And then happiness comes, right? Has it really left a mark? It's like drawing your name. It's like writing your name on water. It's there for a moment, and then it's gone. And you're not the happiness or the sadness. You're not the joy. You're not the grief. You are the absolutely still, silent background against which all happens. You're not the movie. You're the screen. Soundscape Central. Hi, GP. Feel you are here right now for me. It's a very ego question, but I'm in pain. I feel a huge lack with woman, good-looking guy. Oh, as a woman with a good-looking guy. But I think I'm understanding your question. But my nervous system is in pain. Feel huge pain. Feel like I can't get. Oh, okay. Oh, soundscape is a guy. Sorry, didn't see the picture. Okay, so you feel pain with women. I feel like I can't get a woman. Sometimes I don't need it. Then, like now, I feel massively attached to needing it and wanting it, but completely unloved. Thanks, GP. Listen, 18R, 18R. Not sure what that means, but I'm sure you'll tell me at some point. Okay. Well, there's a lot to. First off, you're not alone, buddy. I was scared to death of women, really, till I was in my 40s. Even though I was, competent at meeting and being with women, I really hadn't solved that issue because basically my mother was the demon bitch. I mean, that she was the model for all women, which meant that they were all scary. They were all to be avoided, hidden from, manipulated. Don't let them see you. And my mother hated men. So, I was screwed just for being a man. These patterns run very deeply. One of the first thing I'm sensing in you is a real sense of personal failing. Dude, it's not you, it's all of us. And we live in a time of complete and utter turmoil in the definition of the roles of the genders. What used to be defined environmentally simply by nature, right, because there was no choice, is gone, right? There's no such thing as there's pretty much no job anywhere in the world that women and men can't do equally well. Matter of fact, women do some things better than men that we wanted to hold on to. Women can actually do more things simultaneously. They're made way better managers than men are, simply because the female brain can do more tasks simultaneously than the male brain. My brain can only do one thing at a time. So anybody could do two or more has got me covered. There are differences in approach and interest and that sort of thing. But the cultural differences that have stood for so long are just completely irrelevant. And we're all kind of confused as to, we have not reestablished it on a much more level, much more equal, much more understanding level. Hence, a lot of men are just, dicks trying to take advantage of women and trying to do things completely inappropriately. And others of us are like, completely scared. We all want intimacy and love. We all want to be seen as we actually are. We want to be seen for ourselves. The fear is simply that you're not going to be loved for yourself. The way I dealt with that when I was younger is I was a mimic. I would just kind of take whatever form I needed to take. But of course, that ruse breaks down at some point, and now it's actually you. And of course, that's when I'd be out the back door. So at some point, my guess for you is at some point, very early on, there was a probably from mom, some kind of a rejection of you. When you're little, a personal rejection feels like it's a matter of life or death. So the idea of being rejected, the experience of being rejected, is actually associated with physical death. Now, when you're a child, to be rejected by your tribe or your parents is physical death. It's real. But that association happens. So now you're an adult. Somebody says, flake off. I don't want anything to do with you, which doesn't happen most of the time. It's a nice put down. But nonetheless, that rejection still has the sting as if I'm going to die. Right? And of course, you never do. But the nervous system naturally wants to not have that happen. So it would rather avoid the entire thing and hide away than to risk that level of pain. This is the kind of thing that I would recommend EFT for, because to use an energy healing technique like this that reaches down into the nervous system can help kind of reorient the wound that has caused this to feel like you're lacking with women. I mean, I could tell you all day the fact that that I'm sure you're not. I'm sure there's 4 billion women in the world. I'm sure there's quite a few that will find you quite attractive and interesting, and just as you are, right? And of course, women are feeling the same thing. They want intimacy. They want to be close. They want to feel safe. They want to feel there's some place where they're completely loved and embraced. That's what we all want, right? So we need to start creating that space first within ourselves. We have to create the space where we are okay. We're not rejecting ourselves. Can you see the self-rejection in the question, the way you're asking? I can feel it. You're just trying to, this guy, you just don't like him. He's incompetent with women. He's in pain, right? You just want to get rid of him. He needs to be embraced. You need to start right there with what you actually are. And once you do, you're going to find it's a lot easier to let that guy be seen by others. And when you let that guy be seen by others, yes, you will be rejected. But when you're not, it's because it's really you that's being loved. It's you that is being desired and not somebody else that you've created. And that's the door to intimacy. That's when it really starts to happen. And once it does happen, the potential of intimate romantic relationships to heal childhood wounds, especially father wounds for the woman and mother wounds for the man, is absolutely astounding. Bad relationships will amplify them, but a really good intimate relationship gives each an opportunity to work through all of that stuff that really can't be worked through any other way. So how's that sounding for you? Soundscape Central?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So, sometimes a person
I don't know if any, I have to scroll all the way down to the bottom and see if it.
Sometimes a person can pinpoint in their life what it was that caused them to be that way. You have this, thought about your mother. I know growing up, I felt like my father thought I wasn't good enough until I was a teenager, and we got to have that conversation. And it was my perception of what he was saying. What he was saying is, I believe in you. I think you're better than, what you believe you are, and I want to see better for you. So my perception was very different. Mm-hmm. EFT, I think, is great for what you're talking about, but do people need to go back and identify where it comes from? Do you feel like that's necessary?
Wow. Let me repeat this just in case it was too soft to hear. She was asking basically about, do you have to go back to that original event or series of events or consistent occurrence of a particular energetic environment in order for it to be healed? The energy of the experience of the trauma has to be released. That does have to happen. Do you need to go back there and know what it was and visit it in order to find that out? No, you don't. And thank God. When I was learning about this stuff, it was back in the 80s. and it was Gestalt and abreactions, and even back to the 70s with Primal Scream and all of that. I found that the cure for trauma was more traumatic than the trauma. That it was a reliving of it that had a momentary cathartic experience, but actually healed absolutely nothing. Nothing changed. And I realized there had to be a better way. What I found is this, that if you are really open and allowing, and you practice that inner allowing and that inner setting aside of your resistance to what you're feeling, and you are willing to let all of these feelings, over time, deeper and deeper feelings will be able to come up. Stuff that's extremely, extremely painful. What I've also found in that environment, in that atmosphere, is that the only thing that comes up to you consciously in terms of memories and that sort of thing is what must come up, and you must actually consciously participate in the process. When it does not have the sting that it did at the time. It will be a different kind of seeing it, because you will be now a safe space that is allowing what was created by a very unsafe space to release itself. So the experience is one of simply witnessing this energy as it finally dissipates and dissolves. Sometimes I've had things working with people that have resolved. We had no idea what the origin of it was. It really is up to the energy. If it wants to tell you, it'll tell you. And that's the way I approach it. If it doesn't need to tell me, I don't need to know. I'm not interested in collecting stories about, miserable times. I'm interested only in releasing the suffering that's stored in the body. And so it becomes a matter that the more space there is, the more you're able to let anything come up, the less actually needs to, right? It's the space for the discharging of the traumatic energy stuck in the system that we need to create. And on its way out, it can do all sorts of interesting things. The body will shake. I've had under 5 blankets and I'm still shivering, and then 2 seconds later it's like how the energy finally releases itself in the system. I don't have to determine that, which was humbling when I realized that was the case, but also quite a relief. So now I just let the energy lead. You take me wherever you want to go. I'm just there to kind of facilitate the process, which is why I call the people that I train as coaches facilitators. They're simply facilitating that which is natural to the nervous system. It's natural to the nervous system when it's allowed to function and in its natural state, and it's not restricted. That answer? Yeah, I guess so.
Yes.
Popiasa says, when I have a good day and I have positive ideas and thoughts about myself, I label myself worthy. The opposite happens when I have a bad day. I'd like to believe my idea of myself always changes. Your idea of yourself is always changing. And that's one of the problems. When we think the idea we have of ourselves is actually who we are, we find it is a moving target. It's constantly changing. It's constantly going up and down. And therefore, your sense of stability and your sense of self is going up and down. If you realize that it's just a thought, and that which is seeing the thought is not going up and down, you have put you've taken your feet off the sand and you've set them on solid ground, because that isn't going to change. Yeah, the whole key here is to not believe the ideas you have about yourself. They're not you. They are temporary. And you didn't even create them. Most of the ideas you had about yourself have been given to you first by your parents and then by the culture at large. And it's still happening. The media is constantly bombarding you with ideas of what they want you to think you are. Right? And of course, it's always going to be limited, because they're not going to tell you good things about yourself, because they want to sell you something to make you feel better about yourself. Right? So yes, if you are identified with the idea of who you are, you will never feel stable, because it isn't stable. It's always changing. but you are not. And this is the whole crux, this is the whole point of satsang, to bring the sense of I back to that which isn't changing. Instead of outward towards that which is changing, it turns around and walks back home to the place where it isn't changing. Now, that place that isn't changing is there all the time, but our sense of I can look outward or it can look inward. And depending on where that focus is, will determine whether or not you find yourself to be the unchanging, stable background or the constantly changing world out there. Remember, the hub of a wheel doesn't move. But if you're at the end of that wheel, hang on for dear life. Jeff, Jedi Smalls. I notice when I'm highly creative, I feel different vibrationally. Yeah, absolutely. You could also say you feel different vibrationally, so you're more creative. I'm not sure which comes first. It's almost like I'm open to the infinite without a guardrail to the thoughts. Art flows through me. How can I enhance this? Don't try to take possession of it and think it's something that you can control. You show up to the canvas with your paints. There's no guarantee that the masterpiece is going to happen. But if you show up with the paints, you're in the best place to be when it does. So it's not something you can consciously control like that. Yeah, I remember a story of Sir Laurence Olivier doing a Shakespeare play. And it was one of those moments that's like once in a lifetime thing. The performance was so off the charts that the audience was just, silenced. I mean, it was just like crazy. Anyway, his assistant, after the show comes back, as he's walking up to the dressing room, hears this crashing and banging, and he walks in and says, "Sir, what's the matter?" He says, "This is horrible. This is horrible." He's throwing stuff around. He's breaking stuff. He says, "Sir, you've just given the greatest performance ever." And his response was, "Yes, I know, and I have no idea how." To be an artist is to be completely immersed and lost in the mystery over which you have no control. I remember when I first heard music, and I was stunned. There it was complete. I was like racing to be able to get it down. It was just like unfolding. And I was just stunned. Where the hell did that come from? And then I would notice the times when I would check, okay, come, come down, right? It wasn't obedient to me. But if I was available, it would come, and it would keep coming, even in the most, I'd pull off the side of the road to write something down that, some melody that had come to mind. So the best way to enhance that creativity is, first off, to love and appreciate it. And secondly, to approach spiritually the idea that there's a separation between you and the creativity. Art flows through you, and as it's flowing through you, it is you. Right? There's not you and art, there's only art. You don't have a life, you are life. You don't make art, you are art. The more you are seeing yourself as one with this, and not just simply a vehicle for it or somebody who is creative, but you are, everything is this creative power of the infinite, the more you'll see there are no restrictions on it. And then it's fine. When, the creativity will be through the roof, and then it stops, right? And you're mundane watching some stupid TV show. Both of those are okay. It's perfectly fine. And suddenly you'll find from the stupid TV show an inspiration you wouldn't have gotten anyplace else. I mean, it's the way creativity works. It's not a personal possession. People ask, gee, you're so wise. I go, no, I'm not. It is not a personal possession. I don't know what my next thought's going to be. I just let myself be here. I give myself to it. And as a result, it flows. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I open my mouth and I have no idea what I just said. The things that I say surprise me. I'm hearing them for the first time too. This is the nature of the creative experience. You're simply letting it flow and letting go all of your control over it. Yes, it obviously feels orgasmic when that creative energy is flowing through. There's nothing better, but everything is going to ebb and flow. Right? Anytime we cling to the highs, the lows are going to feel horrible. But if we're not clinging to the highs, then the lows just kind of come and go. It's no big deal. You remain as you are. You remain just that silent background against which all of it is happening. And that's where freedom lies. And that's where you're free from fear. You're free from concern. You have huge ambitions and desires, but you're not the least bit concerned whether they happen or not. It's not up to you. It doesn't matter to you. And as a result, wonderful things can happen. And when it comes, you love it coming. And when it goes, you love it going. Because you can't hold on to anything because nothing is permanent. Nothing is stable except you. Everything else is a constant change, constant flux. And that's the nature of life. If it wasn't that way, life could not continue to infinitely unfold as it is. That's the image of the 1,000-petaled lotus in Hinduism. It is just this flower that never stops opening. But if it never stops opening, it never sits still. But you do. Does that help, Jedi? Chosen one, Buddha said, if I am right, that celibate people will find enlightenment faster. Is that true? He actually didn't say that, and he made no distinction between the monks and the lay practitioners. And the history of Buddhism and Zen bears that out. There are no rules. If there was some kind of prescribed form that it had to be in, or some format, some steps you had to follow in order to get to enlightenment, enlightenment would be changeful, just like everything else. If enlightenment is the end of a process, then it's dependent upon that process, and enlightenment isn't enlightenment. Enlightenment is that which is. It has no cause, it has no beginning, it has no end, it simply is. And therefore, anything that is the result of a process isn't infinite, isn't eternal. It has a beginning, which means it will have an end. So, look, if there's a crack in the door, the truth will get in. There are people in the Hindu tradition, murderers, who attained awakening in prison. And some never even, one famous one, I can't remember, his name escapes me, I was actually an assassin. Spontaneous awakening. But the assassin didn't have an awakening. The reality of that person who thought of themselves as the assassin awakened, and the assassin disappeared. The assassin ceased to be. That energy was gone. So there are no rules here, my friend. You do not have to bend yourself into pretzels. You don't have to become the picture they have on all the yoga websites of the people doing all these things that I can't do. You don't have to do any of that. It is you. The enlightenment is to see that you, right now, the you are right this minute is the one, is the Buddha. It's not the end of a process. So you don't have to become celibate. Thank God, that's been a tough one for me. As I suspect it would be for most. I don't think we have any monks and nuns on the forum right now. If we do, that's great. But I don't get a lot of those in my classes. Some other people I don't get as well. Poppy says, because most of my days involve negative thoughts, I let myself believe the negative ideas. I do know none of these are true, but my thoughts reflect my actions. You're just afraid of your thoughts, Poppy, that's all. They keep coming and you get afraid of them. You don't want them to come anymore. Drop your argument with them coming. They're going to come until you don't care anymore. As long as you care, they're coming. They're fed by that energy, right? You're literally feeding the very pattern that you don't want to have happening. Drop your resistance to it. Drop your concern about it and say, okay, come. Negative thoughts come. Ooh, terrible negative thought. It comes and, it goes. Boom, it's gone. And then a good thought's going to come. And you go, oh, well, look at that. So don't be afraid of your thoughts. That's one of the things that I have been very critical of the whole law of attraction and metaphysical stuff is oftentimes if it's not taught right, people become afraid of their own thoughts. Oh my God, I'm having a bad thought, right? It's like, so what? You're way more than your thoughts are. You're more significant than your thoughts are. Yeah, you have bad thoughts. Who doesn't? I mean, Buddha couldn't maintain it, for crying out loud. Nobody can do it. This isn't the discipline that we're actually after. This isn't what it means to attract good things in your life and have. It isn't that kind of a self-abnegation. It's a self-discovery. It's a self-forgiveness. It's finding that all those thoughts and feelings you have are okay. They're fine. And in that discovery, as the resistance drops away, you find the thoughts improve. Of course they do, because your nature is harmonious. When you stop conflict, you simply fall back into your nature of peace. And so that peacefulness begins to reflect itself in thought and feeling. And that's the very natural raising of the energy level. Sally. Hello, Sally. This is my friend Sally in Australia. I think so. Let's see. Oh, dear. I lost her. Oh, hi, GP. Good to see you on here. Where is our consciousness, knowing awareness during our infancy? Why is it we don't experience birth? You do experience birth. The mistake you're making is thinking that consciousness is memory. Consciousness is that which is experiencing. Every night you go to sleep and you fall into periods of deep sleep. And what deep sleep means is there's no content. There's not even a sense of I, but you're still there. It's simply consciousness with no content. So consciousness is there at the moment of birth, but nothing is registering it or remembering it. There's no context, there's no I, there's no self. So it's simply a series of events. It's not till later that it even gets called birth, and you have ideas and memories about it. But believe me, you're quite there. You're experiencing the entire thing, but it hasn't turned into a sense of identity or memory. It is simply an experience that's going by. And so the same thing is true about a lot of things. I mean, you could say, why didn't experience my, Tuesday, October 23rd when I was in the third grade? Well, you did. You just don't remember it, right? There was nothing. and memory is actually something that comes later. It is not something that immediately arises within a human being. At first, the memory is nothing more than it's not even memories in the way we normally think of them in terms of the intellect and the mind. It's simply the nervous system, which is establishing patterns in response to the environment. Right? It's not even really a memory. It's an adaptation to the environment. Later on, certain things begin to stick. The nervous system decides, I need to remember that because it's important, because it's going to keep me safe in the future. But the impression of a birth, a tough birth, or something like that, is left on the nervous system, even though you don't remember it. So consciousness is always there. Consciousness was there before conception. And that's a hard one to grasp, but it was. The world, you didn't appear in the world appeared in you. The world appeared to you. We've got it completely backwards. We think the world was here and then we were born into it, but the reality is you were here and the world was born into you. It was an appearance in consciousness of all of this. The universe is your mind. It is not a thing out there. There is no universe separate from you. Nothing exists outside of your perception. Your perception just isn't of what's actually happening. Your perception is all there is. There isn't anything objective. Now that I opened up that can of worms, I'm sure there'll be some more questions down at the bottom. Sunil says, how do you let this awakening merge into the entire system and body? I have awakenings, but it is not stable. Well, first off, recognize that you are stable. That even your experience of awakening was witnessed by that which is completely stable and unchanging. Buddha uses a very interesting term, and he uses it in the Lankavatara Sutra, and this is the only place I've ever seen it. He refers to the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. Truth is always true. The awakened one, the awakened true being, is always the awakened true being and completely self-aware. But the experience of awakening is something that is perceived, like everything else. The ultimate perceiver never is perceived. You can't perceive it. The knife can't cut itself. The ultimate perceiver cannot perceive themselves. So what you're doing is simply bearing witness to the reality of who you are, and you let that infiltrate the rest of the body and nervous system. And how you do that is by recognizing when a habitual conditioned pattern arises, recognizing it as such and not identifying with it. If you see it simply as the way the system is reacting to the environment and not me, that's all you have to do. Because now, the moment you identify, this is me and I need to change it, I need to get better, the I is now completely entwined with the conditioned pattern. And it's just a conditioned pattern. But if you see that it is a conditioned pattern, it means you're looking from here. And who is it that's looking? The awakened one. So the sense of I continues to go back to being the one who is awake. And simultaneously fully allowing and compassionately embracing all of the conditioning of the nervous system. That embrace of it is what will change it. Because as long as it's something you have to get rid of, you are keeping it in the defensive position that keeps it all in place. But the moment you say, it's okay for you to be here, I don't care what form you are in, you have just completely embraced it in unconditional love. And that is what makes it sink into the system. The system has to allow itself to be reprogrammed, and you can't do that if you're forcing it. But if you embrace it, it will naturally adapt to the loving environment, just the way it adapted to the unloving environment when you were little. Is that clear, Sunat? Let's see. Make sure I cover people. Greetings from Finland. Hi. Wise words indeed. Real McCoy. I'm a bit confused about self-inquiry. I sit, I meditate, and I ask myself who I am, who is experiencing this. But then I'm not sure what to do next. Just sit there, try to answer it. Can you please advise? Yeah, it's a common problem. We really need to know how to approach that. Sorry, just keep the thing here. We need to know how to approach that. There's two approaches. There's the to meditate and just ask, who am I? But there's also the approach of what's called neti, which is I'm not this, not that. And both of those are legitimate. So, okay, I'm not my thoughts. And I know I'm not my thoughts because I'm aware of my thoughts. They're coming and going, and I'm not. Right? Now, I don't know who I am, but whatever it is, it's different from my thoughts. I don't have to put a label on it. Same thing with emotions. And the same thing with the sensations. And that's all there is to our experience. We never experience anything other than sensation, emotion, and thought. That's it. You know, we have all sorts of ideas about the world and what it's like, but when we boil it down to what every single individual is experiencing it's a flow of thought, feeling, and sensation. And I'm not my thoughts because I watch them come and go. I'm not my feelings because I watch them come and go. I am not my sensations because I watch them come and go. Okay, I'm not any of those things, which of course is what we've all been identified. We've all been identified with thought, feeling, and sensation our entire lives. So there'll be an impulse for the mind to find some different version of it, different thought, a different feeling, a different something. Okay, if I'm experiencing it, it can't be me. And then go, I don't know who I am, but I know what I'm not. And then you just sink back into that feeling. Just try to get in touch with that which is perceiving the thought, the feeling, and the sensation. Don't put a name on it. I'm not quite sure what to do. Yes, it's a very, very empty, quiet place to sit because there's nothing for the mind to hold on to. Because the moment the mind grabs onto something, it's a thought and you're aware of it. And you've actually taken a step away. And you just keep going, well, that's a thought too. So who am I? Who is it here that is looking? It's clearly me that is looking. So who is that? The mind will continue to answer, right? And of course, the struggle is because and I did this for many, many years, I kept looking for the ultimate thought, the ultimate aha, right? That it was going to be that's what I am. And then I realized, well, no. However big and expansive and insightful that is, it's still a thought. It's not me either. It could be glorious and blissful and wonderful, right? The heavens parted and angels are singing. Well, I'm still experiencing it. It's still something I'm perceiving. It's not the perceiver. And then just try to be in that place. You can even look at it like, okay, well, I can't perceive myself because the moment I perceive something, it's obviously not me. And yet I know that I am. How is that? How does that work? Everything else in life I know because I perceive it. Oh, that's my car, it's my foot. But me, I can't perceive myself. And yet my existence, my awareness, it's self-evident. Go there and stay there. That's what Muji meant when he said, marinate in this. Just go there and stay there. It's not easy. It would be a little bit like trying to balance on the head of a pin because there's nowhere to stand. And every time something comes up as a place to stand, that's not it. No, you're not it. Not that. Not this, not that. Not both, not neither. Just all of them. Just away. Back here. Away. Back here. It's very quiet. And your mind will not like it because to go here is to step out of your mind. Because the mind is nothing but objects. It is nothing but the manipulation of thoughts, a symbolic representation of things. And the mind cannot function without something, some reference point. And the reference point it creates is the thought of I. But you're not the thought of I either, are you? You're the one who's aware of the thought of I. So I think that might give you a place to sit, Ryomukai. Let's see. Hello from Bulgaria, from Ivan. Hello, Ivan. Jedi says, I guess the journey now is letting it flow without holding myself to find a way as if there was only one way or a way at all. Yeah, you are the way. Being yourself is the way. You're thinking of yourself as the seeker. You're thinking of yourself as someone here trying to get there. But isn't that just an image you're holding in your mind? Are you not the one you're seeking? To quote St. Francis of Assisi one more time, that which you're looking for is where you're looking from. If we're seeking ourselves, isn't the one seeking that very self? So there really isn't a way, ultimately. But temporarily, the way is simply to recognize that what you're looking for is the one who's looking. And to recognize, like I was talking to that real McCoy, that you cannot encapsulate it in any thought. Any thought, however big, however good, is a limitation. It's a boundary. Clearly, there are some thoughts that are way better than others, way bigger, way more expansive, more functional. But every thought is a boundary. Every thought is an outline. Every thought divides you from the whole, and you're not that. Sunil, got it. Thank you. Good. Love to hear that. The Chosen One said, the process of dying must be terrifying. In that moment, I doubt somebody thinks this is not me. Yes, for most it is. Until all of a sudden it happens and there's the light and everything. Oh, it ain't so bad. But yeah, for most people it is, because they're so identified with who they are in this body that they think the death of this body is the death of themselves. The Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Buddhism has enormous amount of teaching and preparation for people as to how to die, how to actually make that transition. Because at the moment of death, you are going to realize that it's not you, because you're still here. Body's gone. There'll be some vague memories, like an old dream of this entire life, and you realize it's not you. The question is that energy that wants to have an identity so strong that it will pull you into another birth. That's what happens. I want to be somebody. The idea of not being a form is for most terrifying. That is the energy in the Buddhism they refer to as the repository consciousness, refer to it as the vasanas in Sanskrit. And that is the energy that gives birth to the next body. And it is far, far more fundamental than we realize. But the in-between state, it's never terrifying once it's over. It's terrifying while you're facing it, because we have our stories about it. Death is not terrifying at all, but our story about death is quite terrifying. And the more identified I am with the body and this person, the more terrifying it's going to be, because I'm really afraid of not existing. And then it's over. You think, oh, I'm still here. But you have no idea who you are. That's why this process, I invite people to die before they die. Die from who you think you are. Discover who you really are. Then death will be just kind of an interesting event, one among many. And then having another body or not is a choice. You may or you may not. Sunil, thank you for telling me how to pronounce your name. I love that, because these four names I butcher. Angela, hi from Belgium. Hello, Angela. It's really wonderful. The vast majority of people are not from the United States. Remington, my man in Detroit. GP, is it possible to have dreams about the future? Absolutely it is. I've even had moments where I've walked into a situation and realized I dreamed that situation not very long beforehand. Don't make a big deal out of it. It's not this cosmic psychic ability. It's just that our view of time is much more narrow and material than it really is. Time is an illusion. Time is something human beings have made up. It doesn't actually exist. It is a convention and it's useful. We look at the clock. We want to meet somewhere at 1. It's very handy, right? But it isn't an absolute. And so, yeah, and it is, consciousness is awakening worldwide, and it is. The veil between the past and the future, the veil between the living and the dead, is getting thinner and thinner and thinner, to the point it simply won't exist anymore. And we'll see that what we call this place here, and what we call the dead and the living and the past and the future, we're all just made up in our minds, and none of it is actually real. So yes, you can have dreams about the future. Don't try to have them. Don't try to figure out things in advance. Don't think you're going to pull a fast one on the universe, because the moment you know something, the trajectory has changed. You may have a dream about the future and you're dreaming about it. If you take it in and try to do something with it, you've just changed it. It's probably not going to happen. You really have to just surrender to this flow and recognize you're not in control. And instead, just start having fun. Start enjoying this incredible journey, because it's just mind-blowing. And then Remington says, also, hi, Remington. So good to see you. Clay Sue, hi. Asked Harrison this yesterday. Harrison Klein, a friend of mine. Loved his answer. What is yours? What is the? Sorry, I'm not seeing the question. You said you asked it. Is it the one that comes further on? Trying to keep up here. 244. Okay. I try to get through all the questions, but sometimes it's just impossible. Puya says, hello, GP. Hello, Puya. I'm not seeing the question you're referring to, Claysu. I'm sorry. Jason Scott, really good stuff, GP. Thank you, Jason. Sunil, Soundscape Central. Conversations. Sometimes I have no problem with you sending messages to each other or doing this. I just have to discern the questions and the comments. Sunil says, yes, that rejection has the sting of feeling like I'm dying. Yes, that's absolutely true. And that's why we run away from it. Guess what? You're not going to die. Be with it. See what happens. It says, you're going to die if you do it. Say, okay, kill me. Okay, fine, kill me. See what happens. Hi, GP. How can trauma be released energetically? This is Pari 13930. Whoa, a lot of different ways. It starts with the yoga of allowing. Everything I've been talking about, allowing your feelings, it has to start there. You can't force trauma to be released. You have to create an environment where it will release. Remember, the nervous system created the trauma. It stuck the energy there. You didn't, right? So only it can release itself. It created those walls. So what you have to do is create the environment that is exactly the opposite of what created the trauma in the first place, and that's safety and love. You create that energy that's holding that trauma in place will start to look around and go, oh, maybe it's safe. That's what I use EFT for, because that just communicates safety through touch. Just create this inner environment of safety, which also means being willing to be with very uncomfortable feelings without resisting them. And that's how it's done. And you can assist with meditation, with visualization, but it all is the spirit, the energy of unconditional love and acceptance. Without that, none of this will work. With that, there's all sorts of ways now to help that energy grow and expand and become and feel free enough to release itself. The nervous system is holding on to this, not you. So you can't pry its hand open and make it let go. It's way stronger than you are. You simply show it that it doesn't need to do that anymore. And then it just does that, like a flower, very naturally. Oh, there it goes again. All of a sudden I get a whole new influx of... Okay. We can merge into this. Greetings from... Yeah. all of a sudden the questions bounce around because a whole bunch of new ones come in. Really good stuff. Let's see. Do I need, Klesu asks, do I need identity to deal with people? Remember we talked before about the sense of the idea of who you are is constantly changing, right? The problem isn't that identities form the problem is that we think one identity is who we are. It's our attachment to the identity. I mean, I'm very different with my granddaughter, a very different human being than I am now, sitting here talking to you. I'll be different with my girlfriend. I'm different with my mom. Well, my mom's dead, but I'm very different with my sister and my sons, right? All of those are identities that are assumed. They're all a reflection of me. They're all me, but they're not the whole of me. Right? So yes, I'm going to show up in relationship with somebody, and you could call it an identity, but there's just a particular presence of qualities that are appropriate for that moment. Other qualities are not appropriate in that moment, and that's what creates the moment. The problem is thinking that that set of qualities that I'm showing up is all there is to me. That's it. The water, which can take any form, is stuck in this jar, and it thinks I'm this jar. And it's not. And that's what an identity does. That's what mistaking the sense of identity for who you really are, rather than just a momentary thing that happens, is the mistake that we make. That's what makes us constricted. The identity, of course, is constricted. I show up for my granddaughter differently than I show up for my son. And that's appropriate, right? If I'm stuck in one, I have a problem. But if I easily move from one to the other without getting stuck anywhere, I realize I'm all of them and I'm none of them, which means what am I actually? Completely unknowable. I'm just whatever. I'm just this formless consciousness that can take any form. And I do take forms. I'm taking a form right now. I get done with this. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be the Satsang teacher. I'm going to be something else. And then I'll be in that form. So you see, it isn't the forms that we assume. The nature of the form of emptiness is to take form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The only problem is when you get stuck in the form. I am this. I am this person. This is what I'm like. Now you're in the jar. And in fact, you're the water. You could pour it into anything. Right? So yes, you do need a particular set of qualities, which is all an identity is, when you are interacting with somebody. But the sense of identity is that particular collection of qualities in the moment is actually me and all there is to me. So every moment brings out fresh, that's the beauty of relationship. Every single relationship brings out an aspect of you that wouldn't come out in any other way. So infinite relationship also means for the infinite expression of who you are. That's the wonder of it. That's why the one became many. So that experience would be had. So hope that helps. So Sunil, I find it helps to go into the energy sometimes, to shake or cry. Yeah. You simply let the energy do whatever it wants to do. It's so simple. You simply give permission to feel what you're feeling when you're feeling it, because you're feeling it anyway. So you might as well just say, okay. It's happening. We're trying to deny, we're arguing with reality. You shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. And just that argument, this shouldn't be happening, is the cause of human suffering. If it was just, oh, it is happening. It's obviously supposed to be happening because it's happening. Well, yeah, I wish something else was happening, but I totally accept that this is happening. All of that can be there. And really, it simply ends suffering. The suffering is in resistance to this moment. There's no suffering in the moment. Eli says, yeah, I never know what I'm going to say. Sometimes I say some really good, funny shit. You're absolutely right. I know you do, Eli. Sometimes I just stand there gaping, staring at the air. Yep. Yeah. And both are wonderful. Real McCoy. The problem I have is that I cannot watch my thoughts coming. I only recognize them in past tense. It's like one thought is recognizing another thought, but I can only have one at a time. Yeah, it's almost like that. But so just let it go. Just sit with that for a bit. Just be really with that. I only recognize them in past tense. That too is a thought that is not in the past tense. It's right here and right now. Right? And yes, you'll get thoughts now about thoughts that happened before. The whole thought of I, the whole ego is nothing but a thought about what already happened, right? Something happens, and then the thought comes, I made that happen, or I chose that. The choice happens, the choosing thought comes, and then there's another thought that says, I chose that. Well, that's the clown running out to take the bow. You're always in the present tense, and you're recognizing a thought, recognizing in the past tense, but that's right here and right now. And we do only have one thought at a time, although oftentimes it's hard to get where one begins and another ends. But yeah, it's just this constant flow of the impressions of thought. So step back and just notice that everything you've said happened real time, right now, and you're the witness of it. Fall deeper into that. Fall deeper into that. And remember, your mind is relentlessly looking for some place, something it can hold on to, some object on which it can begin to build its structure. Whatever object that is, it's going to be building on sand, but that's what it's looking for, and that's the impulse. And I think that's the energy that you're feeling. But you are in the now. Everything you're experiencing is right now. Just don't have to identify any particular thought or its quality, just that they're there, that you're having them, that they're constantly going on, and they're always appearing now. Even a thought, even a memory is a thought now about the past. Oh, let's see. Eli, what's up, bro? Anne says, is it abnormal to not want to be here? No, not at all. Not at all. And in fact, what you're really saying is, I really don't like and I really don't want to be with the image I'm holding of myself. And of course, you have this idea, if I die, I go somewhere else, I can do something else, or my circumstances were changed. But none of that's going to have and make any difference. Let go of who you think you are. That's what you don't want, because it's suffering. And why is it suffering? Because it's limited. It's bound. You're going to feel, you're a whale in a swimming pool. You're supposed to be in the ocean. Every sense of identity, when it's held to, is a limitation. And also just notice that the I don't want to be here is just a thought. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to take it in. It's just a thought. If that thought, I don't want to be here, never occurred to you, would you not want to be here? It's just a thought. To quote Wu Xin, if the village idiot calls you stupid, do you give it any credence? Why do you listen to your mind? It's just a thought. Mark Nolan, if you're low on most of the time, if you're low on confidence most of the time, does that mean I'm living as the identity and not from my true self? Yeah, the true self. God doesn't wake up in the morning feeling inadequate. Yeah, the lack of confidence, the feeling of not having confidence is part of the identity. It's part of the conditioned pattern, right? And, it could have been events that took place in your life that kind of ingrained into your nervous system that, you weren't good enough in some way. And therefore now you approach these things and you don't have any confidence about it. But yes, it's an energetic pattern, which is all the identity, which is all of the basic attributes that make up the functioning nervous system, which we then project an identity on and say, I am low in confidence. Look at it really closely. Imagine yourself in a situation where you would not be confident, and then go into the actual feeling of it. Stop saying I'm low on confident. Put that story aside for a second and just go into the feeling of it and see if it doesn't reveal something different. Right? Remember, I'm low on confidence is a thought about a feeling. That thought may not be true. It's a story created to explain a feeling that you're having. Is it actually true? Absolutely not. It's a story. So go to the feeling and see if that's really what it is, or if there's something else there. And see if that doesn't open up some space for you to explore the areas that simply are not enough experience. I certainly would have no confidence if I had to go dance a tango. Maybe a couple of years of practice and I might have some confidence. So, it's not like, oftentimes these things, we begin to think of them, excuse me, we begin to think of them as if they're permanent characteristics rather than just a temporary circumstance. When you're a child, it's all temporary circumstances, but because you're a child with your parents, it feels as if it is a permanent reality. And that's the way the nervous system interprets it. So it's not that, you've made one mistake, right? And it's like, oh, I always make this mistake. Something which is really just a temporary condition becomes a permanent condition. It's simply the way the nervous system works. So living from the true self, it's obviously totally confident. But that true self, the real you, we can't leave it as an abstraction. Oh dear. Sorry. If you would. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've been avoiding my coughing fits all day. Of course, I haven't been sitting for 2 hours straight talking until now. The sense of the true self, which is infinite capacity, omnicompetent, let that sink into the nervous system and displace the lack of confidence. We want it to be embodied in it and not be an abstraction. Not clinging to it like it's this other place. We're literally inviting the truth of your being to become the truth of this body. And that's how it colonizes the system. Klesu asked, what is thought? Thought is just another form of energy, like any form. This bottle of water I'm drinking is just a particular collection of essential energy, right? Only it's taking this particular form. Why is it this form, right? Why is there stars? Why is there air? When you really think about it, it's like, whoa, this is like totally amazing. It's actually quite mysterious why it took the form that it did, but it did. And so form is something that is a natural extension of the energy. It's a very high form of energy because it's capable of of representing the entire universe. Matter of fact, it's capable of containing the entire universe. And in fact, the universe in its actual existence is nothing but a thought appearing to the consciousness, which is the actual substance of thought. Consciousness is the fundamental particle. It's not actually energy. Energy is the real substance out of which everything is made, is the very same consciousness that is hearing my words right now. Sally says, oh, Sally, this is the Sally from London. There's another Sally in Australia. Thanks for answering my question about birth. Very helpful. Love all your advice about allowing of feelings. Fantastic. Love Sunday Satsang. So do I. Laird. Hey, Laird, how are you doing? My man in Chicago. Trying to visualize something in the witness realm of knowingness, but don't know how to do that very well without it falling into the experience arena. Can you speak about this? Thank you, GP. Laird. You are the witness. Yeah, don't, you're trying too hard, buddy. You are the witness. Are you not witnessing this all now? Are you not witnessing your thoughts, your feelings, and your sensations? Are you not witnessing me talking? You know, the YouTube channel in front of you right now. Is this not all being witnessed? So you don't need to try to witness. You don't need to try to visualize something in the witness realm. That would be you trying to create a thought of witnessing, which you would be witnessing. The witnessing is always happening. It never stops. You don't get up in the morning and have to rev up the experiencing, right? It's like, okay, now I'm experience never stops, because experience is the dynamic aspect of consciousness. And so it's always happening. So you say, I don't know how to do that very well. Well, you can't do it at all if you're trying to witness the witness. You can't. The witness can't witness the witness. The eye cannot see itself. It is through non-phenomenal direct experience that we know that we are. You don't need to perceive yourself as an object to know that you are. You just know it. This is the true oneness. Mooji calls it non-phenomenal recognition. It is not like I'm recognizing something because I perceive it, because I cannot perceive myself. I recognize myself because I am that. And then being and knowing become one. My knowing is my being, and my being is my knowing. They are not two different things. Oh, okay, it's getting on 3 o'clock. There's still a ton of questions, but I got to draw the line somewhere. My goodness. I always hate to do this. I always go, one more, and then it just keeps going on and on and on. So I think I am going to call it here. More next week. Get your questions in early. I do actually look back at these after the fact to see if there's some other ones that I want to make a video about, or try to do something else with. But even if I didn't answer your question, I'm not just speaking to the person whose question I'm answering. And oftentimes I'll be answering one person's question and I'll get an aha from somebody else who wasn't even anywhere near it. And sometimes I can even feel that the answer is going to someone other than the one that's asking the question. So, everybody is asking everybody's question. So I didn't get yours specifically. Believe me, it got answered. I just have to take that because I've just seen it happen so many times. And remember, the answer comes from the same place as the question. So in this instance, it may not come out of my mouth. It will come, because any question that is directly related to the discovery of who you are has the entire force of truth behind it. Reality is on your side. So believe me, you'll never be, ever be left without. So on that note, thank you all for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to engage in this level of inquiry. You know, we're not here really to improve our lives, as wonderful and as important as that is. We're here to know who we are. And to know who you are is to discover that you are the absolute, you are the infinite, you are the unbounded, and that you and everyone else are all different faces on exactly the same soul. So thank you all. I love you. Namaste.